recording. Recording started. Yeah. Well, there's Brother Dave, Brother Ween, as it is. Everybody, welcome back to the Rogue Disciple Podcast. I am Brother Juice with our good friend, Brother Ween. And before we get started, it has been brought to my attention to make a call to action. If you have not already subscribed, please do like, comment, share, and subscribe. Click the notification bell. I don't even know where the notification bell is, but find it and click on it. And that way, whenever we drop a new pod, you will know. Today, we are going to, again, shameless plug here. Look, we're going to be talking about some stuff out of this book that I wrote. It's a very short book, and I wrote it for me. Please do buy it. It's on Amazon. But I wrote this for me so I could talk to people about valuable lessons from the Bible. These wisdoms, as we were talking about last time, wisdom that we can pull out. There's all kinds of scripture. And since I think it is corrected, because this is the small script before I realized that I needed to go in and like change the size. So we're going to go lesson one, or the first one is the value of hard work, right? And to get started right off the bat, just jump right in. Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. Proverbs 14:23. All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. And then we have Ecclesiastes 9:10. Whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. The Bible teaches that hard work is a virtue and is essential for personal growth and success. Colossians 3:23 emphasizes that our work should be done with wholehearted dedication, not merely to please others, but as a service to God. This perspective transforms even the most mundane tasks into acts of worship and purpose. In today's world where job dissatisfaction and burnout are common, viewing work through this lens can lead to a more fulfilling and motivated approach to our careers and responsibilities. And that's true. So, Brother Ween, your thoughts?
Man, where do we start with this? I tell you what, look, I was looking at some, Genesis. I love the book of Genesis. A lot of people like the book of Genesis because it's the beginning of a lot of things, right? Life, marriage, the beginning of marriage, or the first marriage. I was actually writing a little bit myself recently, and I was talking about how it's the beginning of unity too, in reference to marriage, but it's also the beginning of work. So we see our first work assignment in Genesis, and that is that we're made caretakers of God's creation. So God gives us this gift of work. And so a lot of people, I work with a lot of people that wouldn't consider work a gift, but I think it's interesting. It's an interesting take to just think about like how this is a gift from God. And what do you think about that, brother Juice?
Oh, no, I totally agree. And I do think it depends on kind of where you come from, right? Because all of my family worked. We barely have any shirkers in our tribe at all. And so all of my childhood, it was like, we just work, we just do the thing that needed to get done. Even if you didn't like it, even if you were complaining, you're like, I still got to get it done. It doesn't matter if I don't like it or not, still got to get done. Doesn't matter if it's raining outside. It's that thing still has to get done. So, if you just, in Stoicism, there's like, I forget who said it, one of those Stoic thought leaders. It's like the obstacle becomes the way. I think it may have even been, it was either Epictetus or maybe Marcus Aurelius. One of you Stoics will set me right on that. However, you know what I'm talking about, right? Whatever is obstructs the way becomes the way, right? So the obstacle is the way. So if it's the hard thing, you just do the hard thing. Now, if you don't like what you do at all, then doing it with that kind of spirit of like, I'm doing this for God, because I might not like to do it, but it's something that needs to get done anyway, then you'll find some purpose in that. I mean, when I was working with Frank towards the end of it, I hated it. Because I didn't see there was no purpose to it, right? I'd hit the ceiling where I was. I couldn't go any further. I was not gonna, you know, there
Mhm.
was no growth left. But that wouldn't have bothered me as much if I didn't think that there was no purpose to it. And
Yeah,
so
that is a
we
key.
have right. Go ahead.
No, I think you hit that. That's a good one because I actually read a book probably about 10 years ago, maybe a little longer, 12 years ago, let's say. And I'm in healthcare, and I started working in a pharmacy. And there was a book that was kind of going around in the circles that I was working, or the people that I was working with, and in the central theme of the book in terms of work and the book was about hardwiring excellence, and the center of that in our lives, if we're trying to hardwire ourselves or the things that we do and produce excellence, if you will, is purpose. Like, we have to feel purpose, so purpose gives us motivation. And so I think that's interesting if we think about that, not only from just a, from the world of our work, whatever our work is in the secular world, but also kind of like in the biblical world or in the world of church, purpose and motivation and things like that. So it's kind of an interesting, there's two worlds almost when it comes
Right.
to that, because our motivations might be different. Rather it be a work job, we work hard in the secular world because we want to move up and make more money and be able to stabilize our lives, our families. But maybe we're motivated in a different way for work within the church and with God.
Yeah. To that point, um, speaking of working in the church, my son and myself went up to the church today. They were tearing a couple structures down and
Mm,
going to replace them or something. So we went up there for that. But they had so many guys that we were just like, I had all my equipment for
mhm.
landscaping. So we hit some, trimming some shrubs, doing some weed eating and whatnot. And I'm like, okay. And then we went to somebody else's house and helped them with some stuff they were doing. And so, so there's like what's the purpose of that? Well, the purpose of that is that's how we're serving our church community. That's how we're showing up and being of help to others, right? It's really no benefit to us, but that's not why you do it, right? You do it because you want to. This is how I prove that I care, about somebody else outside of me, right? And one of the guys I was talking to there, he's like one of the men's ministry leaders, and I was telling him about. I mentioned the phrase value leads to money. And he kind of made a face, and I could tell that I struck a nerve with him. And he goes, I would say purpose leads to money. And I said, oh, okay. Cause I said, look, right now I'm doing this podcast. I have two. It's like one for this and one for this. And I said, right now, I'm not really getting anything out of it, but that's not the purpose right now. I know if I provide enough value, the money will come on the back end because value, flows towards money, or money comes after value. And he says, "I would say purpose, you know, money comes after purpose." And I was like, well, that too. I said, "Well, good thing I have a purpose then," you know? And so,
Yeah.
especially as men, we need purpose. Men, you need purpose, right? Because if you don't have it, it that's when we get depressed, or I won't say we, but me anyway. But look, how many men are depressed? How many young men are depressed, right? And if you ask them, right, they'll be like, "Well, I don't have." They don't have a purpose, and I'm sure you see it. You're a youth counselor. I mean, maybe not, because it might be different in the Christian circles where, we talked about discipleship last time. That's
Yeah.
To me, that's my purpose, man. I want to be a good disciple, and I want to help others get on that path, right, and find some solid footing, right, find their feet, as it were, and that's my purpose for doing this, or for doing anything else from now until the day I check out. My purpose is going to be helping other people as a disciple, like
Mhm.
discipleship, right?
Right.
And until that leads me somewhere else, that's where I'm going to be. And that is my purpose for this, right? So what's the value here? Well, the value here is that me and you having different experiences and some knowledge that we picked up along the way, maybe we can say something that'll hit. Dude, you're the clips that you already did, I told you, were going bananas, right? People were eating that stuff up. The Gideon one where you plug the headphones into the Gideon Bible. People are loving that, man,
Yeah.
because it struck a chord with them,
They may have
and I
thought I was a Gideon, and maybe that's what it was. They're like, "Oh, a Gideon. Let's
is that a new
let's
band?
see what Gideon has to say." I'm no
But
Gideon, you guys.
yeah, but you see my point there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it if those people, if they like, comment, share, and subscribe, then we'll get the word out even further, which is crazy for me to say, man. I mean, you knew me when I was like just a heathen, and if you had tried
We
to
both
talk to me about
were.
this that long ago, I wouldn't have listened.
Yeah, but we both were. I mean, maybe you wouldn't have listened to some things, like spiritual things or whatever. I probably would have been a more adept to listen to some spiritual things, but I definitely was not living a spiritual life or a life in the sense of following Christ. So, yeah, we definitely, and that's cool because we come from different backgrounds, but the same background in a way, because we were on the same path. Because a
Yeah,
lot of times when we talk about faith, we talk about a path, and so we were definitely on a very similar path. And but yeah, I mean, glory to God that he got both of us, and he got us in different
yeah,
ways,
yeah,
but he got our attention. So yeah, awesome. Hey, that first verse you mentioned, can we talk about that one?
yeah. The
Real.
Corinthians 3:23.
Oh, is that the first one? Okay, I'm looking at
Which
your
one did
book
you
here.
want to talk about? I got
Colossians 3:3. Did you mention that one?
Yeah, Colossians 3:23.
Okay, so and this is one that I talked to my girls about, so I wanted to talk about this real quick, if that's okay.
Yeah, hit it.
Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. So that's Colossians 3:23. And and that's the thing. And I think, like, if we contrast, let's say again, going back to work, and the other thing, like church, working in the church and things of that nature. Um, it's all about where our focus is. And, if all we're content on is getting, let's say, more money, more accommodations, or what's the word I'm looking for? More awards,
Yeah,
certificates, or whatever the
stat.
case is. We're building up our what do you call it? Not our resume, but we're building up our our work status and experience and all of that. Yeah, I mean that's cool. And sometimes we get in the mix, and we can become a workaholic even in the church because we get these pats on the back, sort of the same thing. So some of the things that we might do at work or feel like we need, and sometimes that can bleed into the church. And so we got to remember why we do it. And there is a purpose. And so when we talk about purpose with maybe from a biblical standpoint, it isn't all about like this purpose is the driver of my purpose is for me to feel good about myself, let's just say.
Right.
Um, a lot of times the purpose really is so that others advance in their lives. We're supposed to think of others before ourselves. You read that in, like, what is it, Philippians chapter 2. I think it's chapter 2 verse 2 possibly, but think
Yeah.
of others greater than yourself. And so there's this sense of humility in our position when we're working or with our work. And so I think it's cool to look at again, the contrast, and you can kind of like read through that with these verses. That one is whatever you do, work basically with all your heart. Work hard, but not for human master, whatever, for the Lord. Like Proverbs 14:23, that was another one you read. All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. How
Right.
about that one?
Oh, let me, I'm sorry, man. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I did want to hit on that a little bit because the mere talk leads only to poverty, right? There's this
Mhm.
guy, Chris Williamson, he has a much more, he's a crazy good YouTube channel. It's called Modern Wisdom. Check it out. But he was talking, I don't know who he was talking to, but he goes, look, in this world, this hustle culture or whatever, he's like, everything you can do besides the thing is not doing the thing. Like me and you talking about doing the thing isn't doing the thing, right? Thinking about doing the thing isn't doing the thing. Writing down a checklist about doing the thing isn't doing the thing, right? So it's like the only thing that is doing the thing is doing the thing, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
and I was like, that's pretty cool. And again, I would take that and go, oh, I know what he's talking about. He's talking about Proverbs 14:23. Like, because you can talk about something all day long. Look, we had to uh, you know, if I said, hey son, we're gonna go up to the church tomorrow and we're gonna do some work. Well, that's not doing the work, you know. Loading the stuff into the back of the truck isn't doing the work. When we're out there like trimming the bushes and weed eating and blowing and all that stuff, that's doing the thing, you know. And so it's when I respect people who put their money where their mouth is. You know what I mean? So whenever you know, if you say you do gonna do something and you do it, then I'm like, I respect it. You know, because so many people don't. They'll say, "Oh, I'll do this," and then they don't do it. They don't follow through, whatever it is. And it's just like, well, then if you do that once, then I'm like, okay, you're already setting a precedent, you know? So it's not like I'm not gonna judge the whole of your character based on that one interaction or that one thing. Anything can happen and whatever. But it's like, well, now I have if it wasn't an emergency on your end and you're just like, oh, I just woke up late. Well, then now I'm
Right.
like, okay, well, you know, I now have a piece of information that I'm going to apply to you going forward. So, you know, if you say, "Hey, meet me here at 8," I might show up at 8:15 thinking that you're just going to be late, you know, and don't get mad at me. So, you know, that's one of those things that I thought was really interesting. Just it, you- it doesn't matter what you do, say, or it matters what you do, right? It matters what you say, it matters what you think. But the thing itself, the action of getting the thing done is the only thing that gets it done, right? Everything else is just talk or thought or ideas, but you have to go and do the thing. And
Yeah.
and giving it to the Lord is like, you know, albeit kind of a new concept for me, but I'm so used to hard work anyway that I'm like, oh, well, now I can do something, and me doing it with all my heart is kind of like glorifying God. I'm like, I'll take that, right? I'll take that.
Mhm.
If God is happy with me giving my, putting everything into it, and that's going to gain favor or create some blessings or something, the ripple effect of it is going to be positive. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it because why not, dude? I'm doing the work anyway, even if it's something I don't like and I have to do. It's like you got to do it anyway. Might as well have the positive benefit on the backside of it instead of just creating your own downward spiral of whatever negative thought. It's like, no, man, go ahead and get the blessing for it. Why not do that? You know?
Right. Yeah. There's this couple of sayings. I think I've heard at least one of these in a movie, and so I'm not sure exactly where I've heard these, but of course, a lot of people have heard of "fell forward," and then there's this
Yeah,
concept of "fell hard," and it may come
yeah.
together. Sometimes people say "fell hard," "fell forward," but it's basically this thing of like, failing is not the end. That's not the end of it. When we fail, we've got to keep momentum, because once we stop, then that's when we get all these other things happen. Depression,
Yep.
our self-esteem levels, get adjusted each time we do that, because we never see that we can actually do it because we don't try to do it. And so I think, so for me at least, I would say doing things for the Lord. I think one thing, what that means to me is I'm going to try to do whatever it is well. And I may not be a success in somebody else's eyes, but I'm going to try to do things honest and well,
Yeah.
so that the Lord is honored in whatever I do, and no matter what the result is.
Yep.
And so And then I got to keep in the back of my mind too, with those types of like fail forward or fail hard, meaning don't be scared of failure. Um, Shoot, look, if you do your study on scientists, Albert Einstein or any other famous scientist, you're going to see how many failures they had before there was an actual success. I don't have any right off the top of my head, but I have heard those stories where it's just an example of there may be multiple failures, but it only take one success for that thing to work out. So, but you got to keep at it and move in that direction. So, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and I forget who said it, but I heard it and I thought it was good. It said you can't fail if you don't quit. You know, and or
Mm.
what was the other one? Yeah, there was this. Back maybe 10 years ago, it was all into like reading these um, entrepreneurial, mindset books and hustle and just work and get grind out and all that stuff and they were good for me at the time. But one of those principles was you win or learn, right? So lose, they just take lose out. You're like you win or learn. It's like, but have you ever played sports, man?
Yeah, I played
Okay.
football once,
Yep.
1 year. I played
So
baseball 1 year. So yeah.
and so if you play sports, because I played on a soccer team and we lost like all the time. We had- I mean, we
I've been on
just
those teams before.
right, but you learn more from losing than you do from
Yeah,
winning. If you win, you could just outclass all your opponents, and you don't learn anything about yourself or your team or how to improve. And we were outclassed almost every team we played. So I mean, we learned, well, one, we learned that we suck, and we learned that we
mhm,
were outclassed, but so we had to just we didn't have a lot of the talent that these other teams had. That was one thing, and they'd been teams for a long time. They played in little leagues, and we didn't have that. So we just came together at the high school level and jumped in there and just got beat to pieces. So,
yeah,
but we learned, right? And so for
right.
us, we were like, we're not going to win this game, but if we can keep them from scoring like an inordinate amount of goals, that was kind of like a Pyrrhic victory for us, right? So we had to
Yeah,
like literally we had to adjust our expectations, but you learn about how to take a loss and keep on going. You learn that okay, if we're going to do well at all, we've got like hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And
mhm,
unfortunately for us, those other teams were talented and they did work hard. And so, there was
yeah,
just it didn't look good for us.
right.
However, we did win a couple of games and we did have I mean, we took some losses, but the loss for us was like we played so well in the game that even though the loss was there, it's like we did as good as we could. But you learn so much more from taking a loss than if you win all the time. Because if you win all the time, you develop this attitude of like, oh, we're invincible. We don't do this, that, whatever. It's like, nah, you're just mortals, just like everybody else.
Right.
So the learning aspect of this is, I think, important,
Mhm.
and the idea to keep improving, just to not stop with that, right? And
Yeah.
that kind of to me, that ties in. It's like you keep working at that too. You don't stop. You don't get to a point you're like, well, I figured it all out. Nobody's ever got it all figured out. You know, no matter how old you are, you'll always have something that, or I think you should always have something that you're still uh, willing to learn. And never be satisfied and go, oh, okay, I've got it all figured out. I
Yeah.
think that's the point where you start to do this kind of spiritual rotting process from the inside when you get there, or at least it's
Mhm.
stagnation, right? And if you're stagnant, you might as well be going backwards, at that point.
Yeah. But isn't it like, so think about this, man. Isn't it cool that in God's infinite wisdom, he created something, work, that not only benefits us, like some of the things that you mentioned, but it benefits others. So it's this dual thing. It's like, in a way, like love, because love can
Absolutely.
benefit us and others, right? there's a verse, Ephesians 4:28. It says, "The one who steals must no longer steal, but rather he must labor, producing with his own hands what is good, so that he will have something to share with one who has need." And so, just in that verse, I mean, it shows there's some benefit from hard work from you for yourself, but then
Mm-hmm.
there's also benefits for others. And so, it's really cool to see how, like, when God creates things, it's much better than we could ever think through how this should develop or work or whatever. But yeah, he created this thing that a lot of people these days, again, we get the wrong idea with work, and sometimes we get really down on work because we've gotten, you know, I'm trying to think of a good way to say it. Maybe we've gotten terminated or fired from a job, and we left a bad taste in our mouth for this particular field or just working period. Just like we were talking last time about churches, you can get a bad taste in your mouth about a church because of something that somebody else does that they
Yep.
do. But
Yeah.
I mean, we need to forget about what other people think or do, and just and go with what God, again, doing it for his glory. Because when
Yeah.
we're doing it for his glory, all that other stuff really doesn't matter as much.
Yeah. And which is that verse? Do nothing out of selfish ambition. I don't know where that one's from. I'm still new at this, so I gotta, spend some more time memorizing my Bible verses. Right. That's why I wrote them down, man.
Yeah, they're in the book.
But,
Plug it again, man.
yeah. Well, look, hey, again, I wrote this for me, so I would have all these, so I could have something to reference. But it's like, but I put it out there for other people too, because I think, what I want to do is reach those people who were like me or like us at the time, right?
Yeah.
Me 15 years ago, me 20 years ago, somebody who's either on the fence or curious and wants to talk to somebody about it, but doesn't, is not like, oh man, I don't want to go talk to a preacher or something like that, because it might be intimidating to them. I mean, no, most preachers are willing to sit there and talk to you. I know that now, but I didn't want to hear it back then. But if they can glean something and go, oh yeah, and the thing is, did you like, just like, I mean, you can do this. I'll be able to do this someday, but like we can talk about a concept and you can just pull up the verse just like that, right? That's the point I want to get to, where it's like, oh yeah, well they were talking about it in this book. They're talking about that in this book. They talk about that in this book, and so so that's my work for myself and for other people, right? I want to educate myself like that because I want to have that available at my fingertips, because
Mhm.
there's joy in it for me, and I know that if I'm presenting the word, that's what God wants me to do. He wants me to get out there and spread the word and help people out. Well, how do you help people out? Well, that's one way, say, hey, brother, I know what you're going through. This concept you're talking about or you're thinking about, it's been around, you know, it's been in this book,
Hey, and
and
I
you
want to
probably heard it before and not know it,
look, and I want to speak up for those like myself that can't memorize very well. Like, I'm really bad at memorizing. Hey, you ask me what John 3:16 is, I'll tell you all day long. But if you give me another verse, I'm probably going to stumble and not give you the exact telling of that verse. But I mean, but yes, when you do study a lot, and you will, I know you'll put that work in, you'll be intentional about it, and motivated to do it, and just like we all should. And so once you put that work in, you'll start recalling things. And like I say, I'm not going to be able to tell you verbatim what that says in most cases, but I know what it's about. And I
Mhm.
generally, and a lot of times after I've studied it enough and read it enough and Googled it enough,
Yeah.
and so now I'm recalling like verses, and or if I use one Bible, a lot of people will do this too. There's one particular Bible you use, like, okay, I just seen this the other day, it was on this page in this
Right.
paragraph. You'll recall stuff like that too. But yeah, it's just repetition
Yep.
and
Again,
putting the work.
and that's hard work, right? That's
Yeah,
that's hard work,
my wife.
which has benefit to other people, right? So, so the way that I wrote the book is like one page is the the Bible verses that have, a few, right, out of the many that you can talk about this, but a few that stand out. And then, a little bit of a translation of or explanation of the verse. And then on the
Yeah,
other page it's like a one page of how that played out in my life, right? And like I said before, so in my book here, I talk about how that's all, dude. That's all I saw is like my mom was a waitress for 18 years, right? She was always working. My aunts were always working. We moved from Birmingham, Alabama to North Carolina when I was 12, and that summer when we got out of school, my cousin says, "Hey man, you ready to go to work?" And I was like, "What do you mean work? Like it's summertime, man. We're going to ride up and down. Like I want to ride into town, like and try to talk to some honeys." He was like, "Nah, man, we're going to work." I'm like, what you mean we're going to work? So guess what, man? 12 years old. I was out there in tobacco fields with my cousin, and I'm like, now granted, I didn't mind, because I didn't have anything else to do, right? So it wasn't that I minded, but I just, I was like, I just didn't know that that's what we were going to be doing. And then we got paid, like grandpa paid us at the end of on Friday we got paid. And it was like, and then somebody would take us to the Haynes Mall, right? Somebody drive us to Haynes Mall, and then like all the girls are there. So that's, now it's different, right? It's like for teenagers, it's different now. But back then, dude, you had some money, you went to the mall. I went to Tape World, man, and got me some tapes, So, but I was talking about how all that changed. And it's like, I went from working at 12, or he's 12 or 13, and then he started to subdivide the land into plots and build houses. So I went from working in tobacco to then, framing up houses and digging footers and, cleaning up a job site, stuff like that. And then when I turned 16, my mother's like, "Well, I'll pay the insurance on your car, but you're going to have to get a job because I'm not going to put gas in it for you." And I said, "Fine, I'll go get a job." Because I was like, I do not want to work in construction again next year. And so then I started working in restaurants, man. It's like, I worked until I was 27 years old before I took a vacation,
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I regret that, dude. I totally regret that. Now, granted, I say that like I would take vacation time off, but sometimes I would just go to work anyway because I didn't have anything else to do. I was single, I didn't have any kids. I was like, I'll just go to work and make some more money, right? Dude, I should have went. I didn't go anywhere. And then about 27, I was like, I'm done with that. That's stupid. Like I'm gonna take a vacation. And if you want to know
And
where,
see,
you'll have to read the book.
Justin, had you been a Christian, you would have rested on the seventh day.
Exactly.
You would have got that vacation a lot sooner. I'm
Yeah,
joking.
no.
I'm sure there's some workaholic Christians out there too. I'm gonna have to call them out. They'll work 7 days a week, 8 days a week if there was an eighth day, for sure.
Right. Well, those people are going to be workaholics anyway, right? But
yeah,
that's why that I believe that, look, the Sabbath was not. It was from man. Like God put the Sabbath there for man to rest and recuperate. To take time to kind of look back on the week and reflect. And yeah, also you need to give glory to God, right? That's what it's about. But it's about taking that time for yourself and having some downtime, because all work and no play makes people go crazy,
Yeah. Well, even and he's our great example. He rested on the seventh day, and so you think of an all-powerful, all-knowing God that doesn't probably really need rest, but I think he's did that to kind of show, okay, here's an example. Rest is okay. There's nothing wrong with rest.
Yep.
I think a lot of times today, because I talk a lot about, not on podcast per se, I have done it before. One of the episodes on my first season of Revitalized Kindness was called Busy Squirrel, or The Busy Squirrel. And I was talking about kind of two different things, attention span, but I was talking about just busy. And so, I always believe that busy, the BUSY, stands for being under Satan's yoke. If we can stay busy, if we stay busy enough in the wrong things, then we're never going to spend time with God. We're never going to open scripture. We're not going to pray. We're not going to have a regular prayer life. And we're not going to do the things that God has called us to do, loving others, the Great Commission. I mean, all those things. So if he keeps us busy in sports, in hobbies, in jobs, online, in the social media world, watching shorts all day long, things like that. I mean, shoot, he's got us. He's got us.
Yeah.
So I think busy is one of Satan's ways to corrupt people so that they will not have a relationship with God. I was reading in 2 Thessalonians 3 to my youth one day, not too long ago. We were studying 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, and when you get to chapter 3, that's a good chapter to read, I think, to sort of like give more depth to what we're talking about. So people can do that later. I encourage you to read all of it, but if you want to check out chapter 3, and it talks about idleness. And so idleness is kind of the opposite of actual work, right? And where is it? Let me see if I saved it. There is a okay, did I copy it over? Okay, so I wrote this is from some notes I had on that subject. There are several different words translated idleness in the Bible. Although there are some subtle differences and nuance, the general meaning of idleness is undisciplined slackness. I love that term. Undisciplined slackness. But yeah, that's the thing. Last time we talked about discipleship, but if we have no sort of discipline in our lives and things of that nature, the slackness comes out, of course. But idleness is another thing that's talked about a lot in Scripture. Work is talked about a lot, love is talked about a lot, but idleness is too. God detests idleness, and so anyway, you read through that, you'll see there's one, and I don't have the verse here. I copied it without verse numbers, but one of the verses in chapter 3 says this: "This is what we commanded you. If anyone isn't willing to work, he should not eat." So don't go hungry, people.
Yeah. If you're not even willing to do anything to help out the tribe in general, right? Then you've made yourself valueless, to a point, like not valueless as a human being, obviously, but like if everybody is carrying you along and then you're not contributing anything, then what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably, what he's talking about there. But there was some context there and we don't have to get into that. But yeah, I like that, right? And again, where have you heard that before? I mean, like, look, there ain't no way I'm out in the middle of a tobacco field, with a hoe in my hand, like it's 95 degrees out there and I'm sweating like a dog.
Right.
And I can't finish, like, or if I was like, oh, well, I don't want to do this, like, and I got to tell grandpa that and everybody else did, like, sure, no way.
I did that work one day, Justin. I worked with, what was it, 8th grade. I worked under the table, of course, for a farmer for one day. It was through a friend. A friend of mine had this job, and he did it all the time during the summer. But he invited me out one day to go work with him. And so I was like, oh, cool. My family, we've got a background that goes pretty far back with tobacco. A lot of farmers and such. A lot of my folk worked for RJR or both. Some of them did both. They worked in tobacco and worked for the company. But anyway, so he invited me one day. I was like, oh man, that's cool. And I can make money. I'm making $4.25 an hour. So for you guys listening, that puts a little context into my age. And I think that was legit. I think that was minimum wage at that time.
It was.
And I don't know what it is now, but yeah, so I worked my tail off that day. It was hot. I was sitting there doing this thing. You might recognize it. You go around the stalk and you pull those leaves off. Okay, that's what I was doing. I was on the middle. I was riding low.
Yeah.
First low ride.
And stuff it up under your arm. You got to stick it under your arm.
And my hands were like, I was dirty, like stuff's falling all over you. It's cool. That's hard work. So I appreciate hard work. I don't want to get that close to that kind of hard work.
Yeah.
if I can help it, dude.
No, that's a young man's game too. I don't want to be up there. They got machines for that now, right? And I look,
Right.
I don't do tobacco products anyway, so it's like I don't want to be out there, supporting that ecosystem. But the other hard work, right? Like roofing, framing, insulation, plumbing, electrical, anything that has to do with the construction of a house. That stuff's hard, man. Like pouring concrete, like the wheelbarrow, man, just shoveling stuff into a wheelbarrow and like going back and forth and dumping loads if you have to dump loads by wheelbarrow. Like you ever try to do 70 loads of mulch in a wheelbarrow in a day? Good Lord, man.
Look,
That's grueling, especially
I
when it's
will.
like over 90 outside and like 80,
Oh, yeah.
85% humidity. Good gosh, man. You know?
I will. You talk about reaping benefits sometimes with hard work. And so one year I was in my college years, I was going to East Carolina. And for the summers, I would work for the school system, Forsyth County school system. And one year we were digging footers all year long. We mentioned digging footers earlier, I think.
Yeah.
And so I was digging footers all year long, and at a couple sites. And then we also were knocking down brick walls and carrying off the brick. So I had sledgehammer. We were knocking.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of work up here. Like
Yeah.
I went back to college that fall
You
semester.
yoked up, man.
I was like, the girls and everybody else was like, Dave, did you work out all summer?
It's
like,
like,
no,
yeah. What,
They
slinging a 10-pound sledgehammer all the time? Yeah, picking up blocks and like carrying it with the wheelbarrow, man. That's all like shoulder and upper back work, dude. It's like all traps. Well, brother, is there anything else we want to hit on this topic, man? I think we covered it pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this one last thing, and this is kind of in reference to that 2 Thessalonians chapter 3. So kind of what that section of scripture is about. The heading I've got anyway in my Bible says warning against irresponsible behavior. So I would just say this. Sometimes we talk about busyness in our world being sort of a bad thing. And I think it depends on what our busyness entails. And then I think it matters what we leave available outside of our busyness. In other words, we're so busy that it keeps us away from God and family. That's probably bad. But there are some elements to being busy. If you read that passage, that are actually a good thing. It'll keep you out of some of the bad stuff that you can get into. Does that. I think it's 2 Thessalonians 4:11. I think that has one of my favorite passages just about being. And again, I think it mentions being idle, but basically to not really be busybodies, meaning us talking about everybody and keep our mouth shut basically in work. And so that's what that is about either. Again, I can't recall it. I can recall where it is, but I don't know. But I think that's a good benefit that we need to. It's important because that's what happens a lot of times in churches. And I just wanted to say that because if we're not in church doing the right things, and again, not to be super religious here, not to be legalistic, but if we're in there getting in everybody's business, starting rumors and trying to just find things that are wrong, wrong color carpet, wrong type of music, whatever the case is, if that's where we're busy, we're there. We're actually going to be toxic. That's toxicity in a way.
Yeah.
So we don't want to cause that kind of environment for our brothers and sisters. We don't want to discourage others. It was all about encouraging. Again, when he wrote his letters, he could be in prison and he was just writing stuff about, oh, brothers, thinking about you, praying for you, and all thankfulness and joy and yada yada. I mean, my dude was just hardcore in the sense that he just super focused.
Yeah.
I'm here, but my brothers and sisters are still out there. And while I'm in here, I'm actually talking to people about Jesus. So he stayed busy in the right ways. He was always working for the Lord, and he always had him in mind, or the mission in mind. So when I say mission minded, if I ever say that, that's what I mean. It's just to kind of have that lightning focus. It doesn't mean we can't crack up and laugh and be ourselves sometimes, and be like us sometimes too, you know, brother juice, and just joke about stuff. That's not what that means. But got to leave room for working for the Lord and building the kingdom. So yeah, that's what I would say. That's where I'm going to leave it. And yeah, I don't have much more on it. This is a good topic for people to pay attention to, though.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, it sounds like a good place to leave it, man. And again, you know what? Since you brought it up, I'm going to do it again at the end too. Like if anybody out there, if you've got anything from this, if you got a good idea, or if you got some value extracted out of this, of myself or Brother Ween in any way, go ahead and like, comment, share, and subscribe. Helps push the algorithm, helps get us, you know, across to more people. And especially if you're a kingdom builder too, this is right up your alley. So, you know, do it for us, do it for you, do it for the Lord. And check us out. I guess we're going to try to make these as regular as possible, at least once a week, you know, if we can. This is the Rogue Disciple Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Brother Juice signing off, Brother Ween signing off, and we'll catch you next time.